What's up, everybody? Matt Maran here for another weekly update. So there's lots of exciting news to go over here this week. But before I get into the news, I first want to mention that I will most likely be doing my live stream on Sunday night at 9 p.m. Eastern time. I do have a little bit of a cold, so we'll see how I feel on Sunday. But hoping to still do a live stream here, so stay tuned and join in if you can. It's always a fun time hanging out and chatting with you guys. But anyway, moving into the news here this week. So former Dodge and Ram CEO Tim Kuniskis has returned and is the CEO of Ram once again. Not Dodge, but just Ram. And just so glad to have him back. And so, it's kind of interesting timing. This happened like a week after Carlos Tavares resigned as CEO of Stellantis. And so I don't know if the two events are related or not. Tim didn't say, but I'm kind of surprised they didn't just name him CEO of all of Stellantis. Maybe they just need some more time to kind of consider that possibility. I don't know. But I think they said Stellantis said they're going to announce something in the first half of 2025 for a successor, but I hope that he gets the job. I'm pulling for him here. But anyway, he talked with Automotive News here just a couple of days ago about why he came back and his thoughts on Ram right now. And, it has all of his usual bluntness that I love. I've sat on conference calls with him talking in the past and stuff. He is so wonderfully just blunt and straightforward, and it's kind of how I would be as a CEO if I ever had the chance. But anyway, he told them, let's be perfectly honest, we are getting our ass kicked. And for Ram, he says that the slow start of production of the RHO and the Tungsten are part of what is contributing to their 24% sales decrease in the first 3 quarters of this year. And he said he's even still waiting for his own RHO to be delivered. I guess he had one on order, and even he can't get his hands on it yet. So he said, though, that it's getting better and it's going to change. He didn't really talk about any of the quality issues that are plaguing Ram this year as well, which I think also are contributing to this decline. But I'm sure he's working on that as well. Maybe it's just something he didn't want to talk about just yet. But as for why he came back, again, he didn't say anything about Tavares, but he did say, I was bored. I missed the fight. It's awesome. I mean, I figured, he was kind of young to retire, and I assumed it was just, the politics there behind the scenes at Stellantis that was probably, causing him to want to leave. So I'm happy he's back now. Clearly, it seems like Tavares was the problem. And, strangely, Stellantis hasn't put out a press release announcing this news yet. I'm not sure why. I mean, it is official, but assuming as far as the changes in leadership that this means that Christine Fuel, who was going to be the Ram and Chrysler CEO here, I guess she's just going to go back to being just Chrysler CEO, which I think is a good idea anyway. Having anyone do double duty and have 2 jobs at once is probably going to not be great. So happy to see that. Hopefully, again, I'm just assuming she's back as just being regular CEO of Chrysler and that's it. But speaking of Tavares potentially being the problem, in separate interviews with a number of company insiders at Stellantis, CNBC is reporting that one source said everybody wanted to keep the HEMI and that Tavares was the only one that wanted to get rid of it. Now, again, these were unnamed insiders, so take it with a grain of salt. But, obviously, it seems like again, if Kuniskis is willing to come back, that, at least something that was problematic about Tavares, will hopefully now not be an issue. So with Tavares gone and emissions regulations likely loosening up here in America next year, it seems like the stage is certainly being set for a return of the V8. Now, as I reported last week, a Dodge engineer told me in person that the Hellcat motor will not fit in the new Charger. So still, don't get your hopes up for that. I know lots of commenters pointed out last week that, anything can fit. And I'm well aware that with enough modification and enough money and willpower, you can make anything fit in anything. But from an OEM standpoint, I think is what he was talking about here. From an OEM standpoint, as far as having it pass crash safety standards, pedestrian safety standards, having it, have enough cooling, having it not drive like crap because of the way the engine's placed. There's a lot of stuff that goes into OEM fitment beyond just like, oh, the measurements work out, or we could put a giant hood on this thing so that it fits. Like, sure, they could do it, but would it be so compromised that it's just like comical? So I think that's why I still think the Hellcat motor is not going back into the Charger ever. Now, Obviously, 5.7 or 6.4 could fit. They'd be both massive downgrades in performance over the Hurricane motor, but if people just want to go slow with the V8, I think Dodge is probably going to be prepared to offer that option to them if, they're able to, as far as, them working out the money there for the EPA or lack of EPA and, those emissions regulations and stuff. If, they're able to, do this stuff and not get fined for it, then I think that, they're going to offer that to people potentially. I mean, that's just my guess here. But so anyway, and thinking about the V8s, the 5.7 I think is out of production, at least as far as majority of production. So that one might be harder to retool up. But the 6.4 is still actively in production because they're continuing to put it in the Ram heavy duties. So to me, I envision the 6.4 most likely, and especially because 5.7 would be such a downgrade in horsepower from even the base Hurricane 6 motor. I think they'd have to do 6.4. Now, that's obviously bigger, might not fit as well, so I don't know what they're going to do. But there's even been some rumors and reports recently talking about them possibly having new V8s or working on a new V8 to, just offer an option to people who want it. And so we'll see what ends up happening there. But, I think there is a chance that we could see some kind of V8. There were early rumors from Motor Trend. This was a couple of years ago at this point, suggesting Hellcat could come back in name by pairing a naturally aspirated V8 with hybridized power and having a plug-in hybrid component. And, there's still some chance that maybe something like that ends up finding its way in. Maybe they use the 6.4 or some other V8 that's naturally aspirated. They can't fit the supercharger under the hood, but you got some room in the back end there to maybe put an e-motor or put something in the front or do something in order to, get that power to, a respectable level. So we'll see what ends up happening there. But, yeah, and I'm sure that, as far as low-hanging fruit, putting the V8 back in Rams, offering that as an option in the 1500, I think is something Kuniskis will probably try and, be a champion for. And, there's also a chance that TRX could actually come back. And maybe if they can get Hellcat engine, tooled back up for that production line, then maybe, we could see the return of TRX and have RHO still continue on, just, like the same way we have Raptor and Raptor R. So we'll see, how that ends up playing out. It's also worth noting, though, that, Kuniskis was also the one that set us up for Charger Daytona here. Now, that might be because he was under orders to, get rid of the V8, but they still could have done other things, and, he thought, this was the best way forward, and he, said himself, performance made us do it, as far as the EV. So don't expect Kuniskis to, just want to V8 all the things. He may offer that as an option, but I think Dodge is still very confident in the electric Charger and the Hurricane Chargers. And, so I don't think you should see a complete 180 from Dodge here. But I think they could open up some stuff and offer some extra options they didn't before. So we'll have to see. But anyway, very interesting to hear that. And some other CEO news, though. Nissan has hired a new CEO for the North and South American divisions, Christian Munier, who was the Jeep Global CEO until November of 2023, and also worked as a Nissan executive previously, even becoming a chairman and a global president of Infiniti at one point in time here in the past. So he'll again handle not only Nissan but also Infiniti in those regions, and he says, "I will work my butt off with the team to get the business back on track," he told Bloomberg, "and to get your profitability up, to get the sales to grow again, because I know it's possible." So he begins on January 1st and will be coming in at a time when, Nissan has said if they don't have any new investments or any drastic change in their fortunes, they got 12 to 14 months, according to insiders, supposedly. So, I think that now we have new leadership and we have some great new products coming out, they have new kicks, which sounds like early reports are that is selling very well already. Armada's, brand new finally for the first time in forever. Murano's finally new for the first time in forever. And QX80. And these are all things that are arriving at dealers now, and by the end of the year here. So hopefully, these brand new products on sale basically now, will hopefully really help to boost Nissan. We'll have to wait and see, though. Maybe it won't move the needle enough. And so, yeah. But best of luck to him, and I hope he can turn around Nissan. Aston Martin this week has shown off the production version, the final production version here finally, of the Valhalla mid-engine supercar. So in addition to this beautiful styling, it does 1,064 combined horsepower, with 817 coming from a customized version of the Mercedes-AMG 4-liter twin-turbo V8 that's been given the flat-plane crankshaft, new pistons, camshafts, and turbos, along with new ignition systems and a dry sump oil system. The rest comes from 3 electric motors that are part of a plug-in hybrid system that seems pretty similar to what we've seen in the other top PHEV AMGs so far. One motor is in the 8-speed DCT, with the other 2 in the front, giving this car all-wheel drive and torque vectoring, along with leaving the back end to be powered entirely by gas. All combined, it adds up to a predicted 0 to 62 mile per hour time of just 2.5 seconds and a top speed of 217 miles per hour. The battery can drive those front wheels in EV mode for 8.6 miles up to 80 miles per hour. And just like the Ferrari SF90 Stradale, those electric motors are also how the car reverses, with the gearbox not having a reverse gear at all. As for handling, it has active aero in the form of a giant rear wing that moves and a front lip that can extend out to produce a total of 1,322 pounds of downforce at 149 miles per hour. Another pretty good figure is the dry weight of 3,648 pounds for this car, which is over 1,100 pounds lighter than the hybridized two-door AMG GT. Also helping the handling is an inboard mounted F1 style pushrod front suspension, a 5-link rear suspension, aluminum subframes, and a carbon fiber monocoque. To slow it all down, you get 6-piston Brembo brakes on 16.1-inch carbon ceramic rotors up front and 4-piston 15.3-inch rear brakes. It runs Michelin's Pilot Sport Cup 2 tires, and with that handling focus, it makes sense that the interior is pretty simple, but it still looks great, and thankfully still has the new Aston touchscreen there that does wireless Apple CarPlay. And the seats are aggressive, as is that new steering wheel, and there's also some nice leather and stitching. And that carbon fiber that you see there is actually structural as well, so all very functional, which is cool. So they'll be making 999 of these, with production starting in the second quarter of 2025. But there's no pricing given for those yet, because if you need to ask, you can't afford it. In some other impressive performance car news, Ford's Mustang GTD just claimed the record for the fastest North American production car at the Nurburgring, doing the lap in 6 minutes, 57.685 seconds, which is 4.3 seconds faster than the old record holder, the Viper ACR, and only 5 other production cars from around the world have managed to do that time under 7 minutes. With this Mustang GTD actually matching the Porsche 918 Spyder. So, I mean, that's impressive, you know. So Ford CEO Jim Farley thinks they can get it to go even faster, though, and wants to retest again in 2025. But, I mean, it just goes to show how serious of a performance vehicle this thing is. I mean, it's basically, you know, like a GT3 racing car homologation special, which is part of why it's able to do those times versus the 918 being a hypercar, you know, but not quite as extreme even, you know, as this. So, but very impressive, you know, that this is going to be sold to the public, and that's really cool. And so, moving on here, though, BMW has also shown the new electric M3 that'll be sold alongside a new gas-powered M3 here. So, this electric one's going to be on the New Class platform and will arrive around 2027 after the regular New Class cars arrive in 2026. And as for the pictures, it's actually smaller than I think many of us were expecting. It looks like it's going to almost downsize possibly from the old M3, which I think is a welcome change. And aside from the lights, it appears to be a mostly production body panel setup already, including those very wide fenders there. It also seems to follow the New Class concepts with a wider grille that thankfully doesn't go all the way down to the ground like the current M3, which is nice to see. We can see that there's strong brakes behind those wheels, and we also get a few other little mechanical details thanks to a BMW video that they put out on YouTube that showed parts of the development process being done on an i4 M50 mule. And so BMW M's head of overall vehicle development said of all these full-blown M cars that are going to be electric, they said they're all going to get a quad motor setup that'll bring unprecedented performance, quality, and features that you can't even imagine today. The video also reveals that the car will be getting a reinforced body and new front and rear subframes as well for these M cars. And Since the teasing's already begun for this thing, maybe we'll see a reveal next year or so, even if the car doesn't hit the streets till 2027. We'll have to see, but very interesting to hear that. And for fans of hot hatches, get a load of this thing. This is the Renault 5 Turbo, technically called the Turbo 3E, but they actually brought back the 5 Turbo. Anyone in Europe that's a fan of European hot hatches, this thing is really sick. This is actually going into production like this too. There was a concept back in 2022. This is the real production version now, and it still looks wild. So despite the turbo name, it's still an EV like the other Renault 5s, but like the one from the 80s, it'll be rear-wheel drive with 2 rear E-motors that provide over 500 horsepower and 350 pound-feet of torque. 0 to 62 mile per hour only takes 3.5 seconds, and to go along with the crazy performance are drastic changes to the styling, including, you can see, even deleting the rear doors on this thing in favor of side vents, and the fenders bulge out, a lot farther than the regular car as well. And even those 20-inch wheels really make a statement here on a vehicle this small, and they run 275 wide tires in the rear. To support this wild performance from a car that's designed to be slow and simple, this one gets a carbon superstructure for extra, rigidity and all of that. And so we don't get any pics of the interior just yet, but I'm sure it's appropriately sporty as well, of course. And there's no price or word on production volumes just yet. Hopefully this isn't insanely limited, but we'll see. They say it's going to go on sale, though, in 2026. And again, only for Europe, so forbidden fruit for us here. But, Renault has partnered up with Nissan and Mitsubishi. Nissan wants some sweet new products, or even Mitsubishi. I mean, come on, this... take a version of this, restyle it, make it the Pulsar, and have, the performance versions of the Pulsar, based on this. Or even there's, I had to look it up, but the Mitsubishi Mirage Cyborg, another 90s kind of cult classic in the hot hatch segment, bring those things back and, rework the motor so maybe it's not all rear-wheel drive, but have it be an all-wheel drive setup. They could even use this platform. I mean, if it's clearly able to do, the insane power from these motors, have this platform shuffle the motors around for an all-wheel drive setup, and then have this be the basis for a new Evo. If you have the platform already here, honestly, I'd even take an Evo that just is a hot hatch, even though it might not be technically, correct for what we mostly know, for Evos. I still think absolutely like some kind of sporty, small thing, throw the Evo name on it, that's fine. If it's fast, I'm all for it. So anyway, we can all keep dreaming, though. I'm sure that'll never happen, but, I kind of wonder why these partnerships don't bring us more exciting products here in the States, because I'd love to get some of this European stuff. But anyway, moving on from the performance car news here, Tesla's head of investor relations supposedly told Deutsche Bank the new Tesla model, we refer to it as Model Q, should launch in the first half of 2025 and will be priced under $30,000, including subsidies, i.e. $37,499 if the U.S. EV tax credit goes away. So the other tidbits that were revealed are that it will use the same production line as an existing Tesla, and that the battery will be about 15% smaller and 30% lighter than the Model 3, offering 53 kilowatt hour and 75 kilowatt hour batteries for this new vehicle. And so, I never know what to think of all these, Tesla predictions. Half the time I feel like it's just trying to boost stock price, but then other times, they do occasionally put out cars from time to time. So I don't know what to make of this. Some are speculating this could be a production version of the Cybercab. Whether we're talking, them actually thinking they're going to get out some form of a autonomous Cybercab by the first half of 2025, or they throw in, a steering wheel and pedals and, sell a regular driver version of the Cybercab and do that for under 30 grand. So there's that possibility, I suppose. Others think, since it's going to share a production line with something else, that this could just be a stripped down version of the Model 3. But they're already like 44 grand, including incentives. Even with a smaller battery, can you really get the price down to 30 grand for a bare bones Model 3? I don't know, maybe, but one other wild card idea that I'll throw out into the internet here, just that I've thought of myself, is if they use like a Model 3 or Model Y for a basis so they can still use the production line, what if they, did some kind of El Camino, like Maverick kind of competitor and, hack the back half off of a Model 3 or Model Y, and then, put some kind of cheap truck bed in there or something, and try and do like a mini Cybertruck or something, there's maybe something like that, because if you're chopping off half the interior and, getting rid of all that bodywork, maybe there could be some stuff there. I mean, I'm sure if there was any kind of drastic change like that, we'd probably see it spied by now, and I don't think we've seen spy shots of anything. So I guess, the Model 3 variant or the Cybercab are probably going to be the most likely scenarios there. But anyway, just wanted to spitball a little bit. But let me know what you think about that news there, and we'll see what happens in the first half of 2025. Another interesting development here comes from Reuters, who managed to get a draft version of a paper that was written by the European Parliament's largest political group, the European People's Party, that's requesting that the EU's 2035 new gas car ban should be reversed. And they're not advocating for V8s and everything, though, or anything like that. Just arguing that in addition to the already existing alternative fuels loophole that allows combustion engines that run e-fuels to continue being built, beyond 2035, that was already in the law. They also want to allow plug-in hybrids to continue past 2035. And this was one important inclusion in the California goals as well, which I thought made a lot of sense and kind of, is the ultimate solution for anyone that was worried about any of these gas bans. Is like, well, you can still have a plug-in hybrid and, keep filling that thing up with gas as long as you want. So I think this is an important, one to include as well for places that, just don't have great charging infrastructure, even in 10 years, which, we'll see how that all plays out. But, people that live in very remote places, people that just, can't justify, an EV if they just don't have charging at their apartment building or whatever. If battery tech doesn't advance at all in the next 10 years and charging doesn't advance at all in the next 10 years and the infrastructure doesn't improve at all in the next 10 years, you still have this backup for some people. I think that's a good thing to include, even if I think it might even be unnecessary to include by 2035, but, a nice thing just so people, aren't terrified of that 2035 date there. But the paper is also requesting that in the meantime here, for the next few years, they push these stricter emissions regulations coming into the EU, supposedly for 2025 is when they were supposed to arrive. They want that to be pushed back to 2027, so car companies there can avoid the nearly $16 billion in fines they'll most likely have to pay just next year alone in the EU as a result of not meeting those standards sufficiently. And so... not everyone agrees with this, though. Like, even BMW's boss has said car companies have had 5 years. They've known about this stuff for 5 years. They've had 5 years to prepare, and a lot of them just didn't prepare sufficiently. And so, it's just something that, not everyone agrees is fair to then push that back and give extra companies leniency while penalizing the ones that actually did try and comply on time. So we'll see what ends up happening with all of this. It's just a paper for now. And, a request, we'll see if it goes anywhere, but it just shows that there is, not only just industry pushback in the EU, but also political pushback now as well. And so, we will see how this all plays out, but very interesting to hear that. And this week, we also got some more snippets that continue to come out here from the interview that Automotive News did with Mazda's CEO here. So last week, I talked about Mazda's ambitions for their 2-rotor range extender and a new gas engine called Skyactiv Z. And this week, a new report shows Mazda is still very much planning to produce regular gas-powered cars for a long while. So they're expecting regular gas and mild hybrid models to be about 2/3 of their sales even by 2030, with the other third being made up of the plug-in hybrids and EVs. And so while talking about primarily like the future of the 3 and the CX-30, he said customers are looking for affordable solutions rather than electrified solutions. They are looking for better value. They are still looking for a reliable internal combustion engine. But we will be capable of making everything some version of electrified, including mild hybrid. Looking at U.S. customers, they are looking for better, reliable engines. The engine that he likely has in mind, since that's what he was talking about in the last interview, or the last article here, was the new Skyactiv Z motor, which I covered last week. Brief highlight is that it's going to have a supposedly 30% reduction in emissions without any downgrade in power. And so it's going to be complying with all of these future regulations without any kind of real sacrifice there, which is impressive. So it also seems like they're not ignoring the overall electrification trend all the way, though, also saying that they want to develop an in-house lithium-ion battery that they can use by 2030 in PHEVs here and EVs that will be more energy dense and have very short recharge times, they say. They also said they already have a very advanced research base for solid-state batteries. So I'm not sure if that's thanks to a partnership or what. I think probably, they have these partnerships here with Mazda or with Toyota and Subaru. So maybe there's, obviously Toyota working on solid state stuff as well. Maybe that's what they're talking about here, but maybe it's, again, another in-house thing they're thinking of as well. But, it seems like Mazda, though, it's like they're not planning to go full premium with their brand, even though they've had this premium push over the last few years. He's talking about affordability. And so maybe Mazda's having a little bit of a change of heart of being like, look, like the premium thing's all fine and good, but I think he's reading, the room here that, a lot of people are just burned out with expensive cars, and Mazda still wants to be there for them with a good, solid, reliable little Mazda 3 and CX-30. But, and I think that certainly makes sense. But I also think, you can't also ignore the fact that there are Americans that are open to EVs if the price is right. And, the market share continues to grow still. It's just growing at a slower rate. But, there are people that still are interested in, affordable, reliable little EVs as well. And, if cost parity with gas does come in the next few years, I'm just worried that Mazda could end up behind if we have a second wave of EV adoption here at some point later in the 2020s. Then, if other companies are putting out awesome, reliable little EVs that cost the same as the little Mazda gas things, except the Mazda little gas things need to be fueled up for more money, need oil changes, need all this extra maintenance, and the EVs from the other companies don't, they could end up on the losing end of that equation. So we'll see what happens. It's a gamble. Everyone's playing this differently in the automotive industry, and we will see, who comes out as the winner in the long term here. But in the meantime, Mazda's having their best year ever in the U.S., so they are doing great. And that's quite the feat, considering, again, a lot of companies are still struggling. Mazda's, they said they're actually going to have their best year of sales ever. So that is impressive, and huge congrats to Mazda. They've put out some great products here, in the past few years, and certainly makes sense. And obviously, this gas-heavy lineup is really working out for them right now with, the current lull in EV demand. We will see how long that lasts, but it's great that, they're able to, cash in here right now at least. And so interesting to hear that. Another company that just last week said they're also doing great, Hyundai, this week they revealed the 2026 Palisade, the second generation of the Palisade here. And while the styling is bold, it continues with that formula that has been proven to work for them, with boxy styling and a premium look that some may confuse for a more expensive car. We don't have a lot of specs yet for it, but they say the front overhang is shorter and the wheelbase is longer, which potentially means even more interior room for what was already one of the best in its class, only recently, being outdone by the Toyota Grand Highlander for a third row room. Other notes inside are that it looks very luxurious, but is restrained with the tech, just having the usual double 12.3-inch screens set lower in the dashboard there so that it has an enclosure. And there's still several knobs and buttons, something Hyundai said people, have been really wanting, and they've realized this. And so I think Hyundai really is so good at listening to feedback that, people complain about all these tablets being just tacked onto the dashboard. This is integrated and enclosed. People complain about having all these, touch buttons, and now they're responding with actual knobs and switches. Hyundai's very, very good at, responding to this feedback really quickly. A lot of companies, it takes them 5 years to integrate these things. Hyundai's like, boom, right here. Okay, we heard this is what people want. Let's make sure that we do that and follow that. Or they're just really good at predicting this stuff because, either way, the fact that they, are nailing it with the right stuff at the right time is really impressive. But like other new Hyundais, the shifter also moves to the column, and it appears to still get the same steering wheel as the new Santa Fe as well. And one fun touch is that the center armrest can fold up to create a third seat in the front. And at least for the Korean market vehicle, as a result, it can seat up to 9 people now. And hilariously, that qualifies it for the bus lane in South Korea. So I guess there'll probably be stickers or something on these so that, cops in South Korea know that these are allowed to be in the bus lane. But that's hilarious. But a 9-passenger Palisade sounds awesome, honestly. I hope they actually bring that option here to the States. That's really, really cool. Now, as far as mechanical stuff, powertrain is still a complete mystery. I don't know why Hyundai always does this. They always show off the styling first and then make us wait a few weeks and then we get the powertrain details. I guess they just really want to keep that attention and hold that as long as possible. But so we'll get the powertrain details eventually. There's been rumors it might be hybridized this time around, but it's still going to be gas powered, of course, and we'll see if it sticks with a V6 or downsizes. But very interesting to at least see that styling for now. And for the last news story here this week, Mercedes-AMG just a few weeks ago teased the silhouette of their new dedicated standalone electric AMG performance SUV that we don't have a name for yet. But this week we get one pic of it in camo in the real world here, and a few pics of its sedan sibling playing in the snow. Maybe the camo is designed to mess with us, but it looks like it has like an upper lip there, kind of like what you see on a Tesla Model Y. I'm not sure if I love that, but we'll see how it all plays out for the final production version. But the sedan seems interesting too, but it also obviously also has those like dummy lights in the back, so we can't really tell too much aside from the very CLS like shape that this one has. And I know they've been saying how they're going to ditch like the EQ stuff with these new EVs, so I'm honestly wondering if like they'll bring back CLS that went away a year or two ago. Maybe they bring it back here, call it the CLS AMG, or maybe they're going to do something totally different. I don't know. But anyway, as a refresher, AMG has said that they'll be getting axial flux motors for these two vehicles with an unparalleled mix of power density, size, and weight, and a battery that'll have a 40% improvement in energy density. And combined, it'll do over 1,000 horsepower. So, yeah, it'll be interesting to see how it develops. I'm guessing we'll see something, official about those here sometime next year. And lastly, I want to thank all of you that are members of the Maran Motoring Club. So we did have one new member that actually joined on their own this past week. So big thanks to Van Allen Garage. I really appreciate the support. Thanks so much for joining, and I hope you enjoy those membership perks. And also a big welcome here to the other new members that were able to join, Joe and Dr. Fark Melton, who were gifted memberships. And of course, I want to give a big thank you to those that gifted those memberships as well during the last live stream, including Brian Harrington, MDKN, and Shane Lockett. So thank you all so much for your generosity. I really appreciate it. I'm sure those members that not only joined for the first time, but also were able to rejoin, really appreciate you guys doing that as well. So thank you all so much for your generosity. And for anyone else who'd like to join, become a member, there's always join buttons here on the video page, on the channel page, and a link in the description. For any of those new members, be sure to also send me a message if you want to get into the Discord server, and also be sure to check out all the membership perks there on the membership tab on the channel. But anyway, let me know your thoughts on all this stuff in the comments below. Thank you all very much for watching, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Take care.